Hello and welcome back to Project 380. Today I'm going to get the car started. Just kidding, I'm scared. So I'm going to be installing a fire suppression system. So yes, today I am fitting a fire suppression system, and that's for a few reasons. I've had a few sleepless nights worried that this thing might catch on fire. Obviously this should prevent this, and obviously if I do plan on racing this and taking it to the track, some events do require you to have a suppression system. But even if I'm not on the track, it's better to have this and not need it, rather than something happen and you wish you installed one. So there's a few different versions of fire suppression system that you can buy. I've gone for a 4.5 litre extinguisher that's manually activated with 2 pull cords, and it's got 6 nozzles. So first off, we've got to find somewhere to mount the extinguisher. The ideal place to mount the extinguisher would be the passenger footwell instead of having a seat. But because I want to be able to take passengers, that's not an option for me. The next option for a normal car would be behind the driver's seat or the passenger seat. Well, that's not an option either. There is obviously the option of putting it behind the roll bar or securing it to the roll bar. But because this isn't a dedicated race car, I really want to be able to put that roof up and down with ease. Fire extinguisher in the way just isn't going to allow me to do that. So my only real option is the boot. So there's a few places in the boot that I could mount it. I could mount it over this side, but the battery and isolator and fuse board are there, so that's a no-go. I could mount it in the spare wheel well, but I really want to be able to put stuff in the boot, so not ideal. I could mount it up here, but again that's going to take up a lot of space. But I have got a fair bit of space above the compressor unused over here. Probably not the ideal place to put it, but that's where it's going for now. So now we need a way of mounting the extinguisher in the car. The kit comes with 2 curved mounting brackets that the fire extinguisher sits nicely on, and 2 anti-torpedo brackets that sit underneath the other brackets. The anti-torpedo brackets should stop the fire extinguisher launching itself out of the other brackets, and I believe in some race events these are a requirement. And then to secure the extinguisher to these brackets, we've got 2 big Jubilee clips. So all of this bracketry comes in the kit, but now I need to make a bracket to secure these brackets to the car. And that looks something like this. I don't want to even get into how long this bracket took me, but this should allow me to fit the extinguisher just above the compressor and right out of the way. So let's bolt the other bracketry to this. And then it looks something like this. So hopefully now you get the idea of how it's going to be held. So I'm going to install this in the car now. I'm not going to put the fire extinguisher on this bracket yet, as that's quite a lot of weight to get into the car all at once. So let's get this bolted in. That's all in there now, and very secure. I think I made it a little bit too high. I could have got it a little bit closer to the compressor, but that is now ready for the extinguisher. Before I put the extinguisher in its home, I want to install this fitting onto the extinguisher, which goes right in the end here. That is a push fitting to allow us to put the pipe into the extinguisher. No need for PTFE with this, as it has got a rubber O-ring. So that can be installed into the extinguisher. I've put this in now because it's going to be a pain to get in once the extinguisher's in the car. But now the extinguisher is ready to go in. That is all in there now and secure, and believe it or not, it's not touching anything apart from the bracket. Now, when placing your fire extinguisher, there's a few things to consider. If you are taking it to an event, you need to make sure this label is all visible. When you're in scrutineering, they need to be able to see that it's in date and it's the right extinguisher. So I've made sure that's visible. Make sure you can easily pull the pin out and put it back in, and make sure the mechanism can move and there's nothing in the way of stopping it. So that's the extinguisher all in. Now we need to put some lines to it. In the kit that I've purchased, you get a load of aluminium pipe. I've got 2 reels of 4 meters. Hopefully this is enough to do the car. So I'm now going to take this pipe from the extinguisher and route it beside the fuel tank and into the cab here, which means I've got to take this panel off. I thought this was in for good now, and I've put all the bolts in it, but that needs to come back out. When cutting this pipe, you don't want to use side cutters, as this will squash the pipe and then it won't work how it's supposed to. So use a pipe cutter to get a nice clean cut on the end like this, and then use a bradawl just to clean it up a little bit, and then blow all the excess out, make sure that pipe is clear. And when bending this pipe, you don't want to use your thumbs like this, as that too will kink the pipe and it won't work how it's supposed to. So I've just got myself a nice cheap pipe bender, which makes some really nice, neat bends, and doesn't kink the pipe at all. That's the first pipe all installed to the extinguisher and through into the car, and I've cut it off to where I need it. So with the pipe now into the car, we need to think about our nozzle placement. The kit that I purchased comes with 6 nozzles, 2 right angles with nozzle fitments on the end, 4 T-pieces with nozzle fitments on the end, and 1 standard push fit T-piece. This T-piece, I think I'm going to install right on the end here, and from there I'm going to branch to the left and the right hand side of the car. 2 of these nozzles are going to go in the footwell, 1 nozzle down here for the passenger, and 1 nozzle there for the driver. And the other 4 are going to go in the engine bay, trying to cover as much of the engine bay as possible. So I'm going to take this T-piece and branch off into each footwell. That's the lines around to both footwells now. It's now time for the first nozzles down in the footwell. And I'm going to be using the T-pieces for this. Again, they are O-ring fitting, so they don't need any PTFE tape. Just a little nip. Now we need a way of securing these nozzles in the footwell. You can't just tie wrap the pipe in place and hope it holds. You actually need to mount these with a manufactured bracket. So I've made some brackets up, 1 for the passenger footwell and 1 for the driver's footwell. I've made it so the nozzles can fit through this hole and then be secured to the bracket, rather than tie wrapping onto the pipes. Be careful with the placement of the nozzles in the footwells, especially the driver's side. You need to make sure it's well out of the way of your feet, so your feet don't get caught on it, and you need to make sure they've got a good coverage. So make sure they're pointing at the legs and a little bit at the center console, but mainly on your legs. This system is here to give you extra time to get out of the car, not necessarily save the car. Out of all of this, the occupants are the most valuable things. So let's get these all assembled and in the car. Well, that wasn't really a fun experience. Having these door bars in the way has made it very difficult to work down in the footwells, especially when you're playing with stiff pipe. You may not be able to see it, but that is the passenger one in right there, connected to a bracket, which is connected to the door bar. The same with the driver's one, that's all the way up there. Nice and out of the way of the pedals, and all the lines are tucked out the way. And I've ran both lines through the bulkhead and into the engine bay and over the passenger side. So now it's time for the 4 nozzles in the engine bay. So we want to place these 4 nozzles so that it covers as much of the engine bay as possible. So I'm going to have 1 down here pointing at the rear electrics and the exhaust manifold, 1 down here somewhere pointing directly at the engine, 1 down here pointing at the alternator and some of the fuel system. Now this one's a bit of a difficult one, as there is a lot of stuff here. Potential for an electrical fire here, all the electricals behind there, and obviously the fuel rail. So I think I'm going to mount it here somewhere, pointing in this general direction. Well, that wasn't fun. But all the nozzles are in and in place now. So we've got one sitting down here, aimed towards the engine, and then down over here, again, aimed towards the engine. Over the other side, we've got one here, aimed towards the alternator and fuel rail, and one over here, aimed towards the electrics and the fuel rail. It's definitely not easy running this aluminium pipe. It is quite difficult to work with, but once it's in, it's in. Be very mindful if you're using this kit in an MX5 and putting it in the boot, plan your lines very carefully, as that is all the aluminium pipe I've got left. Of course, instead of teeing here, you could always come down and tee here, which will save a fair bit of pipe, which in hindsight is probably what I should have done. The only thing I don't like about the aluminium tube is the fact that it is silver. I think in the future I would like to change this to black, but if I feel like it, I could always put a little bit of this braid over it just to hide it a little bit, just to make it a little bit more visually appealing. So the extinguisher and the nozzles are all in and ready to go, but now we need a way of activating that extinguisher should anything happen. And that is where these pull cords come into play. There's 2 pull cords for this kit, one to use inside the cab and one to use on the outside. So for the pull cord on the outside, you want it at the lower part of your windscreen. Somewhere about here would be ideal, so that it's nice and easy to pull. Right there is going to be nice and easy for the safety team at the track to activate, but because I've put my extinguisher all the way over in the boot, I can't have mine here. There just isn't enough length on this pull cord to go all the way from over there, through the cab, and to the fire extinguisher over here. So I have installed mine on the passenger side. Nice and easy for someone to get to. Hopefully the bonnet won't be in the way, and I have checked it's out of the way of the window wiper. I would have liked it over this way a little bit more, but because you've got the air intake for the cab right down there, you will struggle with space. Now mounting these, you do have to mount it to a metal surface. You don't want to mount it to the plastic. If you do mount it to the plastic and someone goes to pull this, you're just going to break the plastic. So underneath here, I've got a metal bracket that is attached to the metal just below the windscreen, and that is nice and secure there. The cable itself I've routed around away from the wiper arm, through this little hole here, and then in the bulkhead into the cab. All I've got to do now is run it down the chassis and to the fire extinguisher. Now for the pull cord inside the cab. If you are having this as just a single-seater race car, you can have the pull cord anywhere you like as long as you can reach it from the driver's seat. But if it's going to be a passenger-capable race car, you need to put it in a position where both the driver and the occupant can reach the cord. So that's naturally going to be around the centre console somewhere. I've pretty much ran out of space here, which would have been the obvious place to put it. I don't really fancy drilling the dash to put it in, so I think I'm going to make a bracket up for it to sit right here. If it goes there, obviously I can reach it, as I can reach everything here anyway, and it's pretty easy for the passenger to pull. So I just need to make a bracket to hold that pull cord. Wherever you do decide to put the pull cord, make sure it's away from anything moving or mechanical so that it doesn't chafe on the cord. Make sure you can access it easy, and when installing the cord, make sure you've got no harsh bends in it or strange angles, as obviously there is a cable inside it that needs to move, and if you make the angle too tight, that cord just isn't going to move. That's all installed now. Made myself a nice little bracket, and that's pretty much the best place I could put it. Nice and easy for the passenger to grab, and I know as a driver I could grab that nice and easy. It's out of the way of the handbrake and out of the way of the gear stick, so I shouldn't catch it, and it's nice and secure. I've ran both the pull cords down the sill and into the boot. Now bearing in mind this kit is actually meant to go inside the cab, I haven't cut the cords down at all, and they only just reach the fire extinguisher. So it's now time to hook these up to the fire extinguisher, and they slot in through these silver fittings and then into the top part of the handle through two little holes. Make sure the black part of the cord is snug in there. To finish the pull cords off, there's some little brass attachments that go on the end. The cord slides through the hole, and then you do up the Allen key on the side. Those little brass stops you don't want butted up against the extinguisher. You actually want to keep a little bit of slack there so that you've got a bit of movement in it. With that all installed and in place, I have got a little bit of excess wire, which I am going to cut down. Now to stop them cables from fraying, I've got some end nipples to go on the end of these cables. These are actually end nipples designed for a push bike cable, but they do exactly the same job. Tuck them back down out of the way, and that is the final part of installing the fire suppression system to the car. My intrusive thoughts are to pull the cord and make sure everything's working, but that's going to be a waste and that's going to make a massive mess. But it's all in and ready to go. My advice would be to only pull that pin when you're ready to go on track. If you pull that pin out and just leave the car and someone comes and pulls this cord, that is your track day ruined. So pull the pin when you're about to go on track, you come off track and put it back in. So that is a fire suppression system all installed on the MX5, ready for a track event. Now hopefully this is something I shall never have to use, but it's there just in case. This could potentially save my life. So if this video helped you install your fire suppression system to your car, let me know in the comments down below. As per usual, like, comment, share and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.